On today's edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast, we discuss Jalen Hurts' comments about his new coaching staff for 2024, plus another mock draft this week, a predictive first-round mock where Gino and I make the selections for all 32 teams.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Eagles fans? I'm Louis DiBiase. Welcome on into a Friday edition of Locked On Eagles. You can find my work also over at Bleacher Report. Same with my co-host, Gino Camilleri, our scouting director extraordinaire. In today's edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast, Jalen Hurts had some comments about the Eagles' new coaching staff that I want to dive into, plus a predictive 32-pick first-round NFL mock draft. The draft is less than a week away. What do we think are going to happen with all 32 picks? We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side. I think we all do. It's a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on a classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or Google Play. Can't believe the draft is 6 days away. Got another mock draft for you. Actually, another mock draft on Monday as well. So it's Mock Draft Central on the podcast. But, Gino, before we get into that, the Eagles are back at the NovaCare Complex. They are working hard, getting ready for 2024 to avenge that 2023 collapse. A lot of players are meeting with the media. We've really been only able to hear from retired guys like Jason Kelsey and Fletcher Cox, or Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman. And Jalen Hurts had some comments about the coaching staff and how right now he's just a sponge, right? Dealing with yet another new play caller. This is going to be his fourth one in Philadelphia. We know the inconsistencies he had at Alabama in this way, as well as Oklahoma as well. So I don't know, he definitely sounded like he's embracing this. I think he's a fan of the new system. We know he had issues with the way things were set up with Brian Johnson and Nick Sirianni last year. I don't know if I sensed any irritation though, but I definitely think having consistency as a play caller in Philadelphia and just in general is important to Jalen, because he's mentioned it in the past how crucial that can be and how he hasn't really had that luxury throughout his career.
And the one time he did, look at what he did with it.
Yeah, 2021 to 2022, he's in it. He goes from a guy that I thought shouldn't be a starter to an MVP candidate.
Our conversations were before that season, does he have enough, to the point where he went out there and proved everybody wrong. He ends up leading to that team to a Super Bowl, and he has that continuity element. Him and Shane Steichen were on the same page, and then all of a sudden, we get back into this wheel, this cog in the machine that is never tending to be broken in modern-day football, and that's what Jalen Hurts is a victim of, is being part of good teams, going back to Alabama. That's what happens there. It's those play callers last 1 or 2 seasons, and then they go get a head coaching job. That's what happened at Oklahoma. That's what happened with Shane Steichen. With Brian Johnson, it was a lot different. It didn't seem to be a good move in the right direction. It seemed to be more of a Mike Groh-esque type of step backwards. But the continuity element for any position, it makes all the difference, because when you're able to go into a season and you already are a step ahead of the game, because you already know what to expect when you're in those meetings, what your coach wants to look for, what the preparation is going to look like, what the analysis after the game is going to look like. But then you have to learn that all over again. I mean, you're starting from scratch to a degree with Kellen Moore, who he's a lot different than what Nick Sirianni had in Brian Johnson, frankly. And we knew that there were going to be new elements of this offense that Jalen Hurts was going to have to go out there and learn. But at the same time, Lou, you can look at it as a negative, but if you flip it to a positive, he's had success going from play caller to play caller to play caller. And is it a bad thing that he is this adaptable to move between multiple different offenses and that multiple different coordinators want to work with this kid? I think that's a testament to him, and you got to look at it in a positive light, because what is the result that you want? It's an upgrade over what you had in Brian Johnson.
For Jalen Hurts, yeah, and if your coordinators are getting promoted, it's normally because your quarterback's been really damn good and your team has been really good as well. So that's not a bad thing that they lost Shane Steichen, and I totally agree. This is not a negative reflection of Jalen Hurts. He's been able to overcome this time and time again. I'm also not saying they should have kept Brian Johnson for the sake of continuity. It didn't sound like Jaylen was someone really that sounded too upset that he was gone either, despite their close relationship growing up. I think the issue is, as much as I'm a fan of Kellen Moore and the offense is coming up and it was necessary change, if this goes the way we want it to, there will be more change. It's why, again, I'm a Nick Sirianni fan, but it's part of why I said he either needs to be the play caller again or I kind of want to move on, because this is always going to happen, whether it's because Brian Johnson wasn't good enough and you need to hire a new guy, or because Kellen Moore was and he gets hired as a head coach. Always ever changing if your head coach is not the play caller. So I think this is going to be a consistent trend no matter what way you look at it.
To make the reference from Game of Thrones, you are Khaleesi here and you want to break the wheel. That's exactly your mindset in this whole thing, Lou. And I totally get it, because if you're a head coach who also is the play caller, the accountability element goes to them 100%.
Look at Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes, man. It's why they are a dynasty. I mean,
and at the same time, if it doesn't work out, you're stuck in the cycle of hiring another head coach, which then turns into a whole other type of mess that you have to clean up, because turning over a whole staff is a lot different than just turning over coordinators, even though, yes, it is very difficult. And I think I probably went into last season a little bit higher on the transfer of power than I probably should have been. It should have been a wait and see approach, because look what did happen. Well, now they did wait and see. They turn it over again. And here's Jalen Hurts' opportunity to be the continuity element himself. Like, if you're going to be the one guy that's the constant there with the rest of that group, even if the coordinators change, your head coach has your best interest in mind. He hired Kellen Moore because he knew that he could benefit what is already in place and implement new ideologies, which could benefit not just Jalen, but the entirety of that offense. And it is the risk that you take. But at the same time, Kellen Moore, he's had head coaching, quote unquote, opportunities come up in the past when he was hot in Dallas, and then all of a sudden he fell off, and then he goes to the Chargers and that whole staff gets blown up. And who's to say that Kellen Moore can't be here for multiple seasons, even if they are successful? And maybe he doesn't want to be a head coach. I mean, I'm sure he does, but there are some guys in this league that they're better coordinators than they are head coaches. And maybe Nick Sirianni is the guy that Howie Roseman wants in there, and Bill Belichick isn't the guy. So,
and look, I'm not saying that it's the only way to be successful on offense. As long as you have Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and an elite offensive line, you're going to be normally a good offense. And your head coach, it doesn't mean just because you lose a coordinator, he's not going to pick a good one afterwards. It just really helps, when you don't always have to overcome that, when you don't have to be like, you look at the Buffalo Bills with Josh Allen and a defensive-minded head coach and Sean McDermott. They definitely felt the effects of losing Brian Dable over the last few years. And then it got right with Joe Brady, but what if Joe Brady kills it again this year? Like, he's going to get
always
a job.
paddling upstream, it feels
always
like.
Exactly. And it's not like, again, a deal breaker for the most part for a team to be successful or not. It's not the only thing that makes or breaks what is a good head coach in this league. It's just a preference I have, and I think the entire NFL does. It's why most offensive coordinators that have even a tad bit of success with a quarterback end up getting hired, even if it's not justified.
And at the same time, I think it goes into what we don't know from the outside looking in, because what truly is Nick Sirianni's day-to-day? And I think that leaves a lot of us questioning this from time to time. Like we've said on this show, kind of tongue-in-cheek, like, Nick Sirianni, what do you exactly do here? But it's, you can go online and look at glassdoor.com and see the job description of exactly what Nick Sirianni is doing in the NovaCare complex. And that kind of clouds the whole offensive play calling element as well. But if there are clear guidelines that this is, quote unquote, Kellen Moore's offense,
which is
he is the play caller,
getting right, Gino, like that's kind of the vibe,
and it takes a bump in a way that I think a lot of us see it going, especially with Saquon Barkley and the additions on offense. If this is a top 5 to 7 offense in football, Lou, these exact conversations that we had last year are going to come back into play. And I think it's a justified conversation to have.
And if it's not a top 5 to 7 offense, considering the talent they have, you're probably going to be looking
he's out the door as it is. Like, see you later.
And your head coach might be as well. So it's definitely something to keep an eye out for. But I still have all the confidence in the world this offense is going to bounce back and be great in 2024. Could it be because they add in another high-octane offensive rookie? Coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles, we got another mock draft for you. 2 in a week, but 6 days away from the NFL draft. This is what we got to do. A predictive picks 1 through 32 mock. Don't go anywhere. We'll get into that coming up next.
As we roll on, we are proud to have Yahoo Finance sponsoring this episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast. And let's get straight to the point. You want to grow your portfolio to deal with the rising cost of inflation, to pay off your debt or your mortgage, pretty much anything standing in the way of you and financial freedom, right? With Yahoo Finance, you can get access to news, data, and tools that will help you in order to reach that financial freedom. And here's an actual story for you. I've been using Yahoo Finance since I was in 8th grade, and I am now about to turn 30 years old. And they've been around for 25 years. So I've been using Yahoo Finance for quite literally 80% of their entire existence. And it has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor looking for that extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and data you need in one place. Securely link your brokerage accounts for a unified view of your wealth, including 401ks and other investments. A comprehensive perspective is what sets apart great investors, and it's how Yahoo Finance ensures that you have the insight to look at your wealth in its entirety. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor. That's yahoofinance.com, the #1 financial destination. Yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com. And we thank Yahoo Finance for sponsoring this episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Guys, the Locked On NFL Mock Draft is available now. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on Locked On NFL Draft to hear who the local experts of Locked On, including Gino and I, are picking for every NFL franchise with live reactions from local college football experts and even the fantasy football angle. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft available now on Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Speaking of mock drafts, we got another one for you today. Gino and I have been doing this every year for the last 6 off seasons now, where right before the draft, we like to do a predictive mock where, we're not going to predict, of course, there's going to be trades up and down the board, and there's a lot of activity, honestly, more and more as the years go on. So we're not going to do trades, of course, because it's very hard to predict that. But if everybody stays put, what is this board going to look like on Thursday night, picks 1 through 32? And Gino, I think this might be an obvious statement, but I feel like the top 5, maybe top 10 even, we have a pretty good understanding of where things are likely going to go. But especially in this class, I don't know if it's because maybe the defensive prospects aren't as good and there's going to be an early offensive run. It's very hard to really have an idea of like who's going to be available for the Eagles if they stay put at 22.
How many quarterbacks are ultimately going to come off the board?
Right.
I mean, there's more and more rumblings every day of guys like Michael Penix. Could they potentially slip into the first round? I mean,
Sure.
I read an article today that said, as much as it might be a shocker, what if the Vegas Raiders took Michael Penix? I mean, even with that injury history, you could still make that argument. What if Denver turns around and takes Bo Nix? And how many of these offensive linemen are going to get in there? It's going to be dominated by offense early on. Could that be to the Eagles' benefit? Could you land the best edge rusher in the class, the best cornerback in the class, be within striking range to potentially get one of them? That's what your fingers should be crossed for come next Thursday. I mean, Quinyon Mitchell, if he becomes an Eagle, if Jared Verse is an Eagle, or Byron Murphy, would that be the worst thing in the world? Absolutely not.
And I think, again, the top 3 we know are going to be quarterbacks, whether a team trades with Washington or New England, like a Minnesota, or they just stay put and take one, which they all need one. I think we know Caleb Williams, Jayden Daniels, Drake Maye, in whatever order are going in the top 3. So, Gino, you have the first pick here, the Chicago Bears. Like, this one's as easy as it's going to get.
Yeah, Caleb Williams, easy. I already put it up on my actual draft board that I have here in my office. I mean,
which, by the way, is awesome. Gino, for people that don't know on Twitter, Gino put together an actual paper draft board, old school, like fantasy football style. It's pretty sweet.
I just bought an old draft board. I'm like, I don't know why I've never done this before. I Googled the board 1,000 times after it's done anyway. I'm like, you know what? I don't play fantasy anymore. I might as well just capitalize on this. Yeah, and it's the closest I'll feel probably to being in an NFL war room.
For sure. Washington, they need a quarterback. Early on, I think people thought it might be Drake Maye. He was the QB2 for, I think, consensus for a while, and they traded Sam Howell, who's his guy, both from UNC. Maybe that meant they don't want to make it weird there, like bring in Drake Maye to be the unquestioned starter. But then Jayden Daniels, like the more and more time went on, we all thought that was the pick. Adam Schefter even made some comments about get your Jayden Daniels jerseys ready. But Schefter made another comment this week, Gino, about like Daniels maybe having his eyes set on other teams, and there was that weird like 4 quarterback meeting they had like joint together, so maybe things are different. I still probably think it's Jayden Daniels, but this one's definitely up in the air. I don't know who's going it to, but it's definitely a quarterback. I'll say for now it's still Daniels. I think he's probably a little bit better as a prospect, so I would take Daniels.
He is still the favorite over at FanDuel right now.
Okay, he's still the betting favorite?
Yes, he is currently minus 140 over Drake Maye, who's at plus 105.
They just moved, though, right?
Number 2 overall pick. It was heavily in favor of Jayden Daniels probably 48 hours ago. Within the last 48 hours, it went close to a pick 'em between those two on FanDuel to be that number 2 pick. It's now that Drake Maye is the favorite at 3. Jayden Daniels is the favorite at 2. But I think it's safe to say that in any order, these 3 guys are going to be the 3 that go.
For sure. And then Drake Maye probably at 3 to New England.
Yes, I think it would be simple.
I don't understand the talk about the Patriots moving out. They desperately need it. I mean, I know they have Jacoby Brissett, but like you got to get a quarterback in next year's class. I mean, don't love it on paper as of right now.
I mean, they do have Bailey Zappi. He's a record setter in college, but no, they definitely need to upgrade. And in this class, I think it would be silly not to. And if they get Drake Maye, I think he's one of the guys that's overthought. Like Washington might be doing themselves a disservice getting Jayden Daniels, or they just land a heck of a player in Jayden, and we have to deal with him for the next however many years.
Great spot for the Arizona Cardinals to be in if they believe in Kyler Murray, which they do. And Murray had a pretty solid finish in 2024 when he came back, 2023, I should say, when he came back from that injury. You lose DeAndre Hopkins last year. This year, Hollywood Brown, now with the Kansas City Chiefs. Rondale Moore, they traded away. They need a complete rebuild. I like Michael Wilson from Stanford, but he's not a wide receiver 1. Marvin Harrison Jr., Gino, one of the most complete receiver prospects to come out in a long time. I think this is an easy pick. There's been some Malik Neighbors hype, maybe as wide receiver 1. I think that's just a direct correlation of over-analysis, and there's just been too much time to say the same things about Marvin Harrison. To me, he's the guy at 4.
He's currently minus 240 to be the number 4 overall pick. Right behind him is J.J. McCarthy at plus 420. I think this is prime trade-up spot if somebody is going to trade up. But if Arizona sits and stays, which I think any smart team with a young quarterback already, you don't have to draft one. You could get a literal generational talent in Marvin Harrison Jr. You do it.
Chargers at 5. They could use a receiver, but Gino, they could also use a tackle probably.
Right now, Malik Neighbors is plus 230 to be their pick. Joe Alt is plus 400. I know.
I thought Alt would be the favorite. Interesting.
It makes a lot of sense if you are Harbaugh coming there and you know your best asset is Justin Herbert and you want to just put to bed any rumblings that Herbert could not be his guy. You draft a tackle and say, this is our combo moving forward. I think Joe Alt would be the smart decision. They have a terrible wide receiver room.
It's bad.
It could be the first team that you're saying, this is a team that drafts for need. But Joe Alt, I think it makes way too much sense for a team that needs that help. And now you have 2 bookends just ready to go to protect Justin Herbert moving forward.
For sure. And for the Giants, I think they need a quarterback in the future. I think J.J. McCarthy going from Daniel Jones to him is very redundant, a very lateral move. Don't think that makes a lot of sense. They haven't really had a legit receiver since Odell Beckham. Malik Neighbors is that legit guy. The Giants were second last, I think, last year in yards after the catch, and they lose Saquon Barkley to the Eagles, of course. Malik Neighbors, I think, the easy pick here at 6. And then the Tennessee Titans at 7. Looks like they're going in on surrounding Will Levis, Gino, for 2024, which I'm a fan of. I like Levis. I know more than you do.
If this is a situation that Joe Alt is off the board, I know our friend Tyler Rowland over at Tic Tac Titans would be pretty upset about this, but if you had the opportunity, Lou, to potentially bring in Rome Odunze to that room, how good could they really
with Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins? That's pretty
DeAndre
good.
Is how many years from retiring? More than likely, right? Why not? If you trust this young kid, let's get crazy here, man. Like the NFL draft isn't chalk. It never is chalk. Why wouldn't they want to be willing to take a wide receiver in that spot?
And then you've got Tony Pollard in the backfield as well. just a really good offense to surround
Odunze's
Will
plus
Levis.
800 behind Joe Alt, who is the favorite. But
Yeah.
Rome Odunze is the second guy up according to FanDuel, so maybe that is the pick for them.
That'd be a great trio in Tennessee. That's going to be a fun AFC South to watch in 2024.
Oh, yeah.
The Atlanta Falcons, Gino, I think this is where the first defensive player comes off the board. They just can never get edge right. They try every single year. Dallas Turner, to me, is a legit top 10 pick, and I think it's a steal at 8.
He is a favorite there, plus 220, according to FanDuel, to be the number 8 overall pick. The guy is a fit to be an Atlanta Falcon if there ever was one. I think our friend Aaron Freeman over at Locked On Falcons would be a proponent of this pick. That wouldn't be a shock if Jared Verse is the guy, but I think the talk is Dallas Turner is going to be the guy there.
All right, Gino, the Chicago Bears, what do they do with that second pick after taking Caleb Williams? And no receiver now. All 3 of the top 3 are off the board.
So this could be a situation where they're like, oh, man, we might have to get off our pick here.
Trade down.
Missed out on the top 3. We potentially have to trade down. But here's something for you, Lou. I think the talk is that Byron Murphy also has the potential to potentially be a top 10 pick. He's the 4th favorite to be the pick here at pick 9, but they missed out on Jalen Carter last year. Do you think Ryan Poles misses out on potentially the best interior defensive lineman on 2 drafts in a row? They need help in the worst way on the interior of the defensive line. I think the talk of the rumblings of Murphy being in the top 10, let's make a selection here that I don't think many people would make.
I like it. Byron Murphy at Chicago, 9th overall pick. I'm going to give Aaron Rodgers another weapon on the offensive side of the football. Got Garrett Wilson. They signed Mike Williams in free agency. Gino, I think Brock Bowers would be the pick here. They're going all in. They're signing a lot of older veterans up front. Tyron Smith at left tackle. Give Aaron Rodgers a legit tight end 1 and just try to win a chip in the next year or 2.
A lot of the talk, Peter Schrager, somebody who's tied in, says the Jets seem to be the most likely. FanDuel has him at plus 185 to land there. If Aaron Rodgers, it truly is all in on him.
And this is ideal for Minnesota now, Gino, at 11. I mean, if J.J. McCarthy falls right into their lap.
Don't even have to trade up for him. Make the pick, Lou. Throw him on that team.
Yeah. The Denver Broncos at 12. Weird spot to be in. I think it's too rich to take a Bo Nix or a Michael Penix, although I could see Sean Payton maybe trying to do that. I'm not so sure. They could use some defensive help as well. This would not be great for the Eagles. I think the first corner is going to go off the board. Pairing Quinyon Mitchell with Pat Surtain would be just incredible.
It would be a lethal combo. FanDuel has them at plus 180 as the favorite to draft a defensive lineman or edge. Cornerback is 3rd for them at plus 400, right behind quarterback. You can make the argument for either or. They just want to be shut down on both islands. Quinyon Mitchell, PS2. And who's to say on draft day, shock the world, a Patrick Surtain trade could happen. Who knows, man? We didn't see A.J. Brown.
Maybe that's
happening.
what happens here.
I'm not saying it has to be the Eagles, but it's the NFL. We know crazy.
You lose Mitchell, Pat Surtain's not a bad consolation prize for sure. What do the Raiders do here at 13, Gino?
Talk about maybe the worst situation in the entire NFL.
Yeah, that's just a bad place.
Devontae Adams, I would want to get out of there. Max Crosby, I would want to get out of there as well. I'm just kidding. My dad's a Raiders fan. I got to just rag on him a little bit. Offensive lineman is the favorite for them at plus 140. Do they take Olu Fashanu? He is probably a top 10 player who's overdrafted or underdrafted at this point at 13. Yeah, let's give him Olu Fashanu.
Yeah, I think that's a smart pick. Just not a quarterback worth the 13th overall selection.
No way.
For the Saints as well, they could use a lot of help pretty much everywhere. I think they're running offensive line. Maybe this is when it happens. I'll take Talise Fuyaga from Oregon State.
Minus 310 to pick an offensive lineman for the Saints. I think that's a safe pick.
The Colts are another team that I don't know if there's a huge need. Interesting to see how they'll build around Anthony Richardson.
Or I think this is where the second cornerback goes. Could this be our boy Quinyon Mitchell, man? I think this is a real possibility that he is taken there. Or no, we gave Quinyon Mitchell.
So he went to Denver, yeah.
Yeah, my bad. But Terry and Arnold, I think that would be a pick for them as well. Cornerback plus 115 for them. Wide receiver plus 300. Those top guys are off the board. I think Terry and Arnold, that's a Chris Ballard type of player.
I think so too. The Colts love traits. Arnold is, to me, one of the trait seats players on defense in this first round. That's going to be picks 1 through 15, 16 through 32, including the Eagles pick at 22, coming up next right here on our Locked On Eagles predictive first round NFL mock draft for the 2024 NFL Draft. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast, we are brought to you today by Monopoly Go. I think everybody knows that I definitely have a competitive side to me. And if that's the case for you, Monopoly Go is perfect. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly, where you can play on not one but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part, messing with your friends. You can charge them rent on iconic properties, just like in classic Monopoly. But now you can also heist their vaults of riches for yourself, and the leaderboards show who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. It's not just your competitive side that loves it. You can also team up with your friends and people around the world in timed tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in on the game, join with your friends, download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. Again, download Monopoly Go, free on the App Store or on Google Play. All right, Eagles fans, thanks so much for tuning into this Friday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. We got another mock draft for you today. Round 1, picks 1 through 32. What Gino and I think could happen on Thursday night. Again, some picks I think are slam dunks, but there's always a bunch of picks, Gino, every single year where you're like, and we've talked about how Seattle does this a lot. It was kind of Detroit last year where you're like, whoa, can't believe that happened. And I think that's going to happen. Now we're at pick 16 through 32. This is the range where I think it's going to get a little bit crazy.
So here on the FanDuel Sportsbook, I just pulled up the odds to be a first round pick. And this is usually guys that are like bridge first round, second rounders.
Yeah.
A.D. Mitchell is minus 700 to go in the first round. I'm not saying he goes here, but that's interesting to me. Like, what team is going to take a stab on those wide receivers come that middle of the 20s? And that second tier of offensive linemen, like Amarius Mims is minus 2,000 to go in the first round, Lou. Somebody is going to take a stab on him. You know what?
Sure.
Let's get weird with it, Lou. Is this your pick or my pick?
This is my pick, but I want to hear what you have to say.
Offensive line, it's a weird selection, but like, would Amarius Mims be that guy for Seattle where we're like, oh, or here's the first overdraft of the day. There's plenty of other
and like over Troy Fautanu?
Yes,
totally
it's such a Seattle selection where we're like, yeah, here we go. Let's start the draft now.
No, I like it. I'm with you. Seattle always does stuff like this. And Mims, he's got the traits. He's definitely more raw than Fautanu, but Gino, I'm with you. This is where it can get weird. I like that pick for Seattle at 16. What do you think Doug Peterson and Trent Baalke are going to do with Jacksonville at 17?
You gotta think that with the extension of Josh Allen, with Trevor Lawrence being the guy that they're just probably going to continue to give him help, but they do have such a glaring weakness at the cornerback position, Lou.
Yeah.
They went with a lighter type of guy a few years ago. It didn't work out in CJ Henderson. Could they be that team that takes Nate Wiggins and could be a team that overdrafts him to bring in some help? And would it make sense that Baalke trades out here? 100%, but we're not trading out. I think taking Nate Wiggins, it fits the profile of what they have in their cornerbacks there in Jacksonville. Let's throw them out there.
And this is why I've said, and somebody asked me on Twitter today, where do the Eagles have to get one of these three corners? I would say, again, it's that 14 to 16 range, because you can make the case for the Raiders at 13, Indianapolis at 15. We have Terry and Arnold going there, Wiggins to Jacksonville at 17. Seattle, like that 16th pick is who I'd be calling up, especially if they like a weird prospect. Not weird, but for that range, like an Amarius Mims, they might be willing to move down a little bit and still get their guy. So that would be the range, because I agree, Nate Wiggins, I think, would make a lot of sense for Jacksonville to go opposite Tyson Campbell. Pick 18 here, I've got the Cincinnati Bengals. They got T. Higgins for one more year, Gino, but I don't think they're going to be able to pay him. Jamar Chase is going to get a bag. What if they say, let's keep building around Joe Burrow? They could go trenches. I'm going to say they take Brian Thomas Jr., though. Tyler Boyd, also a free agent right now, has not signed anywhere. Brian Thomas Jr. is going to be a Bengal.
They're plus 900 to grab a wide receiver. It's probably going to be an offensive investment, I would say, between offensive line, which probably is the favorite. Do they see Troy Fautanu there? And you can make the argument that they want to grab him. I think it's smart, though, because you're probably going to cash in on one of those wide receivers and you just turn around. Well, you still have your number one. Now you get another guy on a rookie deal. That's a lethal offense to have to deal with.
And then the Rams here at 19. Interesting spot for LA. This is the first time they've had a first-round draft pick, I believe, since Jared Goff.
2016 was the last time they had a first round pick.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's been 8 years. That's nuts.
Wild.
They're close with their selections at plus 125 offensive lineman, plus 150 to be a defensive lineman.
Yeah.
I think this pick is it makes so much sense. I think Latu, he's in LA already, he goes to UCLA, you keep the kid at home. They need help at that edge position.
Mm-hmm.
You can make the argument that he's your top guy on any given team's board over Jared Verse. I mean, it's kind of pick your flavor. Do you like the technician? Do you like the speed to power in Jared Verse? Latu, being a Cali kid, send him back home.
I think the Pittsburgh Steelers get a steal here at 20, Gino. They're going to need an offensive lineman. Troy Fatanu has no business being available still at 20. I think that's a slam dunk pick.
Andy Weidel is in that room as the number 2 there. He brought in Isaac Seumalo for a reason. He loves those offensive linemen that are versatile. They play with balance, play with the ability to get up to the second level. You're right, Lou. It makes all the sense in the world.
All right, Gino, one pick before the Birds. You got the Dolphins at 21.
Interesting spot. I ultimately think that they're probably going to have to invest in the offensive line as well. Heavy favorites at minus 195. Who is your next guy up here? Because it's probably J.C. Latham for a lot of people. You can make the argument that if that Mims selection didn't go, that it was him.
Yeah, it's Latham this point or Tyler Guyton.
I'm going to say that they go with Graham Barton simply because I don't think they have that guy at center yet. They need guys all over the line. You can play him anywhere. You can make the argument that he is your cup of tea over J.C. Latham. And that's really the argument that you're going to get into in this second tier of these offensive linemen.
All right, Gino, let's make this pick together. We're on the clock here for the Eagles at 22. Some of the options, and again, this is predictive what we think they would do in this scenario. I think J.C. Latham would be a favorite, the Alabama tackle. Let's see. I mean, on defense, Jared Verse would make a lot of sense, just value-wise. Chop Robinson's there too. At cornerback, I mean, the top 3 are gone, but you still got Kool-Aid, and I believe Cooper DeJean we have not taken either. He's listed as a safety here for some reason, but he's a cornerback in my eyes. Predictive, I think I like Verse, but I think it would be Latham.
Plus 135 to go corner, plus 200 to go O-line, plus 200 to go D-line and edge. Vegas isn't giving us a lot of help on this position. They have brought in all of the top cornerbacks.
They did.
Where do you like DeJean? Personally, I like him as a safety. With Jared Verse there, that's a us pick. I think that's you and I would make that selection. J.C. Latham probably would be the guy, though, Lou.
It's a tough. That's a tough spot to be in.
It's a tough spot. But at the same time, you're going to get a good football player out of DeJean.
I'd be happy if the board fell this way. I mean, it stinks that none of the top 3 corners are there, but I'd be pretty happy with the prospects available.
Should we flip a coin on this? I
think it'd be Latham. My gut's telling me it's Latham.
Stick to what they know. They go 21 years without taking a cornerback in the first round.
Honestly, I think DeJean would be a sleeper for this pick. I think they like DeJean more than I do compared to a Kool-Aid McKinstry. J.C. Latham going to the Eagles, though, at 22. Minnesota on the clock here. Their second pick at 23. We had them taking J.J. McCarthy before at 11.
Probably have to believe they want to help that offensive line position, I would assume, or you want help on the defensive line, but at the same time, you bring in J.J. McCarthy. You need help on that offensive line if you want to get the ball downfield to a guy like Justin Jefferson. They already have Darrisaw is their left. No, or is it? Darrisaw is their left tackle. Let's say they go out there and they add Tyler Guyton, they pick the next best offensive lineman at that spot because Dallas could potentially grab him. I mean, they're going to be begging for offensive line here.
Yeah, they really need one. I think they'll probably go with the guy. I don't know if there's a tackle worth taking here, Gino, but a couple good interior offensive linemen. Cooper Beebe, I think, is a little underrated on these rankings. I'm going to go with Jackson Powers Johnson from Oregon. Whether he's the long-term center or you play him at guard, I think JPJ does go inside the top 25.
I would hate that if it happened. I think JPJ slips to round 2, unfortunately, but it would make a lot of sense if the Cowboys picked him because they need help there in the worst way.
All right, well, the Packers, they're established with Jordan Love. They have taken a million weapons at receiver and tight end, so can't imagine they go offense unless it's tackle. Gino, what do you think of with Green Bay?
Offensive line is what they are heavy favorites to go out there and get. And it's like, could you imagine if Jared Verse is still sitting there on the board?
I was going to say.
Like, that's crazy. That's crazy. I mean, do they add another wide receiver to that room? Could you make the argument there? I don't know, but
it's a lot. It just feels like a log jam at this point.
What could the Packers do, man? Like, it does it have to be defense? Their defense is good. Their offensive line with Bakhtiari moving on probably.
Well, in the positions they need, I could see Cooper DeJean being this pick.
Yeah. Yes. He's a Green Bay Packer.
He just feels like a Packer, right?
Feels like a Packer. Yes. Good call there, Lou. He is a Green Bay Packer. And
yeah,
Darnell Savage no longer there. So, I mean, they're going to need a guy to play that type of role. That makes a lot of sense.
And this pick is so easy. Jared Verse staying in Florida, right down the street, basically. Jared Verse going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They need edge help. That's just too easy at 26. Cardinals, second pick of the first round. We had them taking Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4. 27, Gino, you're on the clock here.
I could see them using edge help as well, and I could see Jonathan Gannon loving Chop Robinson, man.
This is like new Hassan Reddick?
Yeah, and on this favorite to be a first-round pick, Chop Robinson is a heavy favorite. What is he right now? Where did I just scroll away from? I have all these odds up, but he is a guy that is going to be in the first round simply because of the traits. If I had to bank on it at the end of the day, like if you're going to say, does Darius Robinson fall in? Is it him? Is it Adiza Isaac? It's probably Chop simply because on what that ceiling could be.
Everybody tells me teams draft best player available. The Buffalo Bills is here going to show you why that's just a load of garbage. They are absolutely taking a receiver. I think A.D. Mitchell would make a lot of sense here at 28 to go with Josh Allen.
He's the favorite to land in Buffalo as the team that is going to pick him. He is a favorite to be a first-round pick. I don't know what this talk was about. Like, he has diabetes, and they were these anonymous scouts that just want to say all this stuff.
I'm buying that.
If
that
you were
feels
an
like we need him to fall. It feels like we need him to fall to 28, so he doesn't go top 20.
But if you're an anonymous scout, like,
it's a coward move,
man. Like,
I hate anonymous quotes, man. Everybody knows in this podcast I'm not a fan of that. So I think A.D. Mitchell is absolutely worth a first-round pick.
You buy what you see on tape, and I
see
first-round player in A.D. Mitchell, man. Like, you see Deebo Samuel type of stuff at times with him.
All right, do the Lions get weird again, Gino? They're at pick 29.
Detroit Lions, what are they favorite? To get a cornerback, I think if DeJean was there, you could make that.
So Kool-Aid's still on the board.
The guy, Kool-Aid McKinstry would make a lot of sense for them, Lou. And I think that's the one glaring weakness for them. They have Brian Branch to replace Chauncey Gardner-Johnson there. They need help at the cornerback position. Let's go with that.
I'm getting Lamar Jackson, another wide receiver outside of Zay Flowers. I like Rashad Bateman more than most. I think he just has been bad luck in Baltimore with injuries and just lack of chemistry with Lamar. And, of course, last year they're trying to get Odell Beckham the ball. I think they're going to add – so it's a little lower here, but I love Xavier Leggett from South Carolina. A little more raw, but he can develop into Lamar's true X. That's not Zay Flowers' role anyway. I love that pick for Baltimore.
We're getting real interesting here with that Leggett pick, and I would like to see that dynamic of him and Rashad Bateman in that offense. Like, that's a lot of size that Lamar is going to be throwing to, and you got Mark Andrews in the middle of the field. That's interesting.
Derrick Henry too, just get big.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're just going to beat the living crap out of the AFC North, man. That's what it's looking like.
All right, 31, Gino. Unfortunately, you got the Niners pick. What are you doing here? Give them a terrible player.
We're going to trade the Eagles. We're going to trade this pick to Philadelphia. Yeah.
We're giving him Joe Milton.
We're going to give him the first punter off the board.
Yeah.
No, but in all honesty, so if they go ahead and they trade Brandon Ayuk, there's going to be a big need for them to go and grab a wide receiver. You see Kansas City sitting there. Could they be the team that gets Xavier Worthy and steals him from Kansas City? I think Xavier Worthy to Kansas City would just be lethal. Does Troy Franklin sneak into the first round? Does Ladd McConkey sneak into the first round?
I think of those three, two of them are probably these final two picks. Maybe the final.
If you move on from Ayuk, Ladd McConkey makes a lot of sense to me. Of like
I was
how
about
he
to
can
say,
operate
of
in
the
those
guys you
short
just
areas.
mentioned,
Yeah.
of the guys you just mentioned, I think McConkey makes the most sense for San
Yeah,
Fran.
let's give him Ladd. I mean, I think that's a good pick for them. Like that stinks that I have to say that, but that's a pretty solid pick.
All right, and let's get the Chiefs their new Tyreek Hill. Hollywood Brown could be that deep threat, but Hollywood's a guy that can play across the formation. Xavier Worthy, put him in the slot here. We'll see what happens with Rashee Rice. They need weapons, especially for the future. Xavier Worthy, the luxury pick, goes to the dynasty of the Kansas City Chiefs. That was fun, though. I think if that is the first round, Gino, there is some unpredictability there. Like next Thursday, I definitely don't have as good of a handle on it as most years, but I think that's actually fun. I like that.
Next Thursday, if you are not subscribed to the show, subscribe now. And I can tell you that there's about 70% of you watching this show or listening that aren't subscribed. We are going to be live for the entire first round as we are every single year, Lou. And we're only
year 7 of doing that.
7 years
or
in a row.
6 or 7.
Yeah, the Andre Dillard draft, whatever that was. But at the same time, there's nobody that does it live every single year besides us. We'll be doing it again. Tune in wherever you catch us. I can't wait. I feel like a kid on Christmas, and we still got 6 more days before we.
And we still got 4 more podcasts for you as well. We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Enjoy your weekend. We'll see you on Monday for Mock Draft Monday. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. As always, thanks so much for downloading, watching, and listening. And let's go, Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.